Hello and welcome to SPORcast, a Canadian podcast discussing patient-oriented research. Research done in partnership with patients. I'm Beverly Pomeroy.
And I'm Lisa Ridgway, and we are patient partners who sit on a variety of patient councils and advisory groups, all with the vision to encourage research to answer research questions that matter to patients and aim to improve healthcare.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you will be inspired to get involved and create your own impact in order to support healthcare research be more relevant and meaningful. Please enjoy the show.
In a new home and brought to you from home.
Well, welcome
SPORcast
everyone
is back.
to Stronger Together. This is a co-produced meeting of the minds between SPORcast and the BC Support Unit. This is our town hall focused on COVID-19, produced by an incredible team at the BC Support Unit, Justin Otteson, Michelle Duffy, and we have the expertise of another patient partner, Kent Cadigan-Lofsgaard, who is our technical advisor and production expert, and sometimes announcer. Now, I do want to acknowledge and share the privilege that many of us have because we are located within the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of Indigenous peoples across British Columbia, especially since all of us are calling in from different parts of the province, perhaps even different parts of the country. And BC, our home, and their home is home to 200 distinct First Nations and the Métis chartered communities, each with their own unique traditions and cultures. And I also want to recognize the serious issues around systemic racism, especially as I am a privileged person, that are being acknowledged and exposed across British Columbia, across Canada, and beyond. So speaking of Stronger Together, my co-host and the better part of me is unable to join us. Bev Pomeroy can't be here today, and that's sometimes what happens with the lives of patient partners. But the SPORcast team did not have to cast their net very far. We have decided to make the AHSN president, Stirling Bryan, our SPORcast honorary co-host. Thank you, Stirling, for this promotion.
Thank you so much for calling on me, and delighted to step in, and obviously wish Bev all the best.
Thank you, Stirling. So I want to thank our guests for being especially brave. They're returning guests, so that says something about the element of bravery. And I'm just going to go around and ask you each to unmute yourselves and then to briefly introduce yourself. So Megan, I wonder if as patient partner on the call, you can introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan. I'm calling in from Parksville, British Columbia on Vancouver Island. I'm a patient partner with the BC Support Unit, as well as the Patient Voices Network, and I'm here to be part of this today.
Thank you, Megan. So Stirling, I wonder if you can please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stirling Bryan. I'm a health economist, and as I always say, don't hold that against me. And I'm the president of the Academic Health Science Network, and was until very recently the scientific director, but that role has now been taken by someone else who will meet very shortly.
Oh, I'm not sure that Danielle is still with us. So Stefanie, can you jump in and introduce yourself, please?
Everyone, I'm Cheah. I'm the manager of the Reach BC platform, which is a newly launched online platform to help connect British Columbians to health research opportunities. The platform was developed as part of the demonstration project of the BC Support Unit, and happy to join today.
Oh, that's great. And we can hear the wind, so you're lucky you're sitting outside. That's wonderful. And Alison, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lisa. I'm Alison Orth. I'm Unit Director with Clinical Trials BC. I'm joining you today from White Rock, British Columbia. And Clinical Trials BC is one of the operating units in the BC Academic Health Science Network. And great to see everyone on the call.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bravely returning for a second time. Now, just before Stirling and I actually sing for our supper, oh, pardon me, Danielle is back. Danielle, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry about that. I disappeared there for a short bit. Danielle, Lavallee, good afternoon. It's nice to be part of this with technical problems and all. I'm the end of my 7-week joining as the scientific director for the BC Support Unit and the BC HSN, and really excited to be here and part of this event.
Well, we've thrown you into the deep end, Danielle. Not only did we get you on a SPORcast episode with Stirling, but you're joining us again for the town hall. So thank you for your devotion and your passion for patient-oriented research. During this town hall, there may be some cross-talk, and that's not cross as in mad, but cross as in a good debate. And it is okay to go a little bit off script, as Minnie Downey often says, we can build the bridge as we cross it, and that goes for the town hall too. I'm just going to launch straight into the 4 scripted questions that we have, but we do encourage people to ask questions of each other as well. Here's the first question for our panelists. Healthcare and health research across British Columbia had to react hard and fast to COVID-19. And along the way, some feel that patient engagement and patient partnership found itself sidelined. So I want to know how we can rebuild trust in patient-oriented research and regain the progress that we had made. So Danielle, I wonder if you can give us, right off the bat, we're going to launch you back into the deep end.
Well, thanks, Lisa, for that question. And, you know, I had the opportunity this morning to sit on another COVID webinar from Ottawa, actually, or Ontario, that was looking at patient involvement in COVID research. And I would say that that's probably a sentiment that comes coast to coast. And I will agree with that statement. I think at the front, we were all frantic and trying to figure out which way was up. But I think that there's a big course correction, and I would offer that it's in large part for the patient voices really bringing us back on track to say, hey, why aren't we part of these dialogues and deliberations? So I appreciate that, and I think that you know, the work that we've been doing within the BC Support Unit has really been trying to pull that back in and think about not only patient partnership at all levels, but how do we also, and public partnership, I would say, but how do we streamline that and coordinate that across the number of initiatives that are rapidly ramping up, so that we can not only support patient and public involvement across the work that we're doing, but also share what we're learning as we're learning it. Because I really do think, as this podcast is titled Stronger Together, we're going to be stronger together, not only in our own respective work, but in partnering as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danielle. Megan, do you mind if I just ask you, what do you think about regaining trust in patient-oriented research?
Yeah, I think it's really important to regain trust, because we've seen how much we can accomplish with patient-oriented research and how much further and deeper our research goes when we use patients. I think that each group will regain trust in a different way, as each patient partner has been affected differently based on their experience of being left out right now. But I think if patient groups reach out to the patients and see what they need to do to feel wanted again, and bring them back in and let them know how valuable they are, then we can definitely regain the trust.
I think it might be just as simple as asking people, don't you think?
I do.
Alison, can I ask you to comment as the head of clinical trials on that?
Thanks, Lisa. I'm just reflecting on the question and what Danielle and Megan had to say. I think from our perspective, at least when everything happened, we were so focused on how do we ensure that these clinical trials are available to patients and the investigators, their teams, and then our role with that piece, but recognizing at the same time, should we be engaging with patients and the public as to those pieces. And so as I'm reflecting, I would ask the question for us to think about, what is it that was missing that wasn't automatically part of the process at that time? Like, I know that it takes a long time to develop those relationships, and the work that the support unit does and other groups like that to really build all of these networks and ways to engage, and that the patients and the public are part of that and embed that into the process. So I would, and that's something I will reflect on in the clinical trial space, is why that wasn't part initially in some of the but I think the focus was really on trying to how ensure that the trials were available.
Yeah. I think Kathy McNeil, the CEO of Island Health, said it had to be a blunt instrument. It just had to. And many experienced patient partners have been able to rely on the long-term relationships that we had with our research teams and such. But it's really the newer people to POR that I most fear for. So I think we can have a call to action to reach out to those people that haven't participated yet. Stefanie, as the passion behind Reach BC, what do you think?
I just want to echo, I guess, the sentiment that it was a very unique situation that we all landed in the beginning of March, I guess, this emergency situation. And when you're in that sense of emergency, there's an urgency to, the funding goes out to the researchers. They need to submit their grant applications, and the ideas need to be happening instantly almost. But I do think it's never too late to engage patient partners in research, even though you have a research project funded, and there's probably still details and things that need to be finalized, and definitely a patient voice can lend so much to the research, and we hopefully can help those researchers find those patient partners through the Reach BC platform. So the Reach BC platform is a place where researchers can find both research participants and patient partners to join a research team. So hopefully by having Reach BC as a resource that facilitation can happen. And so hopefully in the future, maybe the future state would be that these researchers already have patient partners as part of their teams. And if this ever happened again, that they would already have someone as part of their team. So it's not like they need to go out and find someone when this situation happens in our labs.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, thank you for that. In an ideal world, I think patient-oriented research would be the only way to do research, but we're not quite there yet. In fact, the hard work is still to come, with the first 5 years of SPOR being refunded, hopefully by the CIHR. So Stirling,
I'm gonna challenge your premise in the question, if I can.
Yes.
Because I think what we saw was a scramble, no question. And I think there was, to some extent, like patient-oriented approaches being put to one side. But I think what we also need to recognize is that that wasn't universally the case. And actually, this has been an opportunity to bring challenge to people who took leadership roles. And I think, so if we take the Strategic Research Advisory Committee that's been established, and there were some vocal voices, not naming any names, as to the composition of the SRAC as it's known, and it didn't include a public or patient voice, and I think that was a mistake, and that's been challenged, and actually they've now recognized that is something that was an omission, and now the people who are leading that have started to really understand and embrace a patient-oriented approach. So we are now in a position where we're moving towards that being addressed, and the people who are in leadership positions are wanting to address that. So I think this has been an opportunity for people people in those leadership roles provincially to actually learn about what actually can be provided. And I think we're potentially in a better place as a result of this. So I would actually see there's a glass half full aspect to this, as well as a glass half empty aspect, I think.
Thank you very much for the challenge on that, because I think with the challenge comes change. And I think one good thing, not that it's all unicorns and rainbows out there. But I think one of the things that has come up through the COVID crisis is that people are talking. And that is a really important thing for patient-oriented research. So Stirling, unless there are other comments by our panel on the first question, I'm going to pass the SPORcast co-host torch to you for the second question.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to comment on, so Carolyn Canfield has put a very important suggestion into the chat box. I would encourage others to do that. So thank you, Carolyn. You've suggested that we might think about, I mean, I don't know who might do this, but a patient-led priority setting process in relation to this, something along the James Lind Alliance. And you've put the James Lind website in the chat so people can look at it. So thanks very much for that, Carolyn. So please, we are trying to monitor the chat as we go. Okay, second question is about technology. So what we've seen in the pandemic, which I think is not surprising and actually has some encouraging signs to it, is the exponential growth in technology. I'm not sure that it's truly, I think, like, has it actually been exponential? Anyway, let's leave that to one side. It's been a rapid growth in technology adoption with things like online resources, telehealth, virtual health. So the question to the panelists is, how did this happen so quickly and so urgently? Are there any red flags that you would raise around this, or is it all a good news story around this urgent transition to the adoption of these sorts of technologies? So I'm going to let whoever wants to take that first step forward. Thank you, Danielle.
So I think that it was able to go big or scale up in a lot of settings because it was already in play. I think what we've seen is policy trying to catch up to what practice has been trying to figure out. And I think that will continue. I had the opportunity, June was a great month to start because I got to be on the SPORcast with you, Stirling. I also got to attend the Wellness Summit that was in partnership with the Rural Coordinating Center and First Nations Health Authority. And so a lot of the conversation was around virtual care and how do we make it so people don't have to come into our health systems but still provide high quality, well-coordinated care to people where they are. And I think that this will challenge and will push forward new models of care and care coordination. With regards to the red flags, absolutely, because we're changing workflows, and I think building those new workflows in partnership with patients and people who are accessing healthcare is going to be critical so that we don't provide poor care for some people who that model of care doesn't fit for. And I think that there's a lot to consider in terms of the type of care people want to access, making sure it's high quality care. As I said, that we need to also make sure we're able to focus in on. So who are we reaching? Who are we not reaching? Who's getting better care? Who's getting worse care? Those are going to be things I think we're going to need to continue to focus on. And I know there are groups that are already focusing on that and thinking about that. So learning from them, learning from their experiences, I think is going to help us improve further.
Great, thanks, Danielle. Maybe we'll ask Megan if you wouldn't mind coming to the conversation next.
Yeah, of course. I think what basically happened was there was a need for people to stay home, but there was also a need for people to reach out to healthcare. So we had to find a way to do that. And we have so much technology nowadays that the easiest way was to video conference, was to phone, was to basically do anything we could that would allow people to stay home and feel safe while also getting the care they need and taking care of their health. I think that there's kind of pros and cons to it. Personally, I have to phone my doctor as a phone conference, and then from that phone conference he has to tell me, come into the office, I need to see you. So I kind of do 2 appointments where normally I would have just done 1, but overall I'm pleased with it. I find it's easier too because they call when they're ready. There's none of this waiting for half an hour as they're running behind schedule. I don't feel like I'm wasting my time, and I don't feel like I'm wasting their time either.
Oh, I think the poll results have just been shared. So we have a real mix of people, so that's great. 18% are patient partners, caregivers or the public, 27% researchers, 5% decision makers and 11% clinicians, and 39% are other. So that's interesting. So our biggest category is other. So that says to me we need to have more categories.
Yes.
That's our learning from that. Okay, let's stick with, well, maybe come back to those results and discuss them later. Let's stick with the question, and maybe I'll go to Alison next. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Stirling. I'm going to take this into sort of the clinical trial space and technology, and I see Cindy Triton is on the call today, but it takes me back to, and Lisa, we talked about on the SPORcast, the survey to gather participant experience from those that have participated in a clinical trial. A big piece there is the burden on clinical trial participants to attend some of the visits and the data collection points, and sometimes that might mean that participants in the research have to drive an hour or further to come into the study clinic for perhaps 10 minutes to be asked some questions and drive home. And I think that's often because there's very strict sort of requirements that have been laid out. And in order to reduce that burden, I think technology and virtual care and other ways to collect this data and interact with the participants and remote monitoring as well would be really helpful and is something we need to move towards. But the clinical trial sort of industry has been very slow to move into this type of technology, very cautious, because we have to ensure the regulatory grade data and that things are conducted in a way that's going to ensure that it's approved. But through COVID, there was this push that in order to do the visits and ensure the participants were safe and still collecting data and being monitored, it had to switch to virtual ways of doing that and informed consent and bringing forward the issue of electronic informed consent. So I think it's moved those pieces forward, which is fantastic. I think great for the participants. And I hope that some of these pieces, that the regulatory bodies will continue to approve the use of them in this way.
Great, thanks, thanks, Alison. And then to you, Steph. Yours is an online platform that has now been launched, and it's fabulous that Reach is live. Reach BC is live. So
it went live at the end of April, and actually it was not the original launch date, I think, for Reach. We expedited it slightly due to the COVID pandemic. At first, we thought that maybe we had to delay our launch because of COVID, but we recognized that actually this is a time when people in the province need to be connected more, actually, not less. And through Reach, we were hoping to connect them to these COVID-specific projects that are happening. And luckily, because it's an online platform, that it could still facilitate like the continuation of research. Had to be virtual or an online research projects, but at least it didn't come to a halt. That there was a number of projects that were being posted on Reach BC, and people were being connected to those and able to participate in these projects from home. So yeah, having this technology available was great. I hope that it would be, I hope because of the technology that we have, that it did lead to more people being connected to research, or you know, even for their doctors to still be able to see them during this time that we're meant to stay at home. I think just for another point of view also is that there's more people probably using the technology now, but I think we still also have to consider people who may not be technology users. There is like, even through development of Reach BC, we were always trying to consider like we know there's a population that will not be the best at using a platform like that. So I think we always have to keep that in mind of how we can support those populations as well, who are like in rural areas or just not happy to use technology like that.
Thanks. And the piece that I think I worry about in relation to this sort of question is the equity. Like, you know, I think everything we know about COVID is that it's like making inequities worse. Those people who are really suffering in our society as a result of the pandemic are the people who least are able to use virtual health, or at least able to really do well in this environment. And we need to be conscious of that. So my worry is that what we're doing is actually then creating a healthcare system that's even better for the educated middle classes, those who already do well out of the healthcare system. And I think we just need to keep that caution in mind. That's a glass half empty comment that I'll leave that on and pass back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Stirling. That's a great comment, because we can't assume that virtual care or even telehealth is the right thing for mental health people. For instance, people that have lived experience of mental health have often commented that it's the relationship, it's that face-to-face time that matters so much to them during their recovery, or even during the throes of their illness. So I'd like to lead us into a question that I hope people will challenge me on, because that's the idea behind this. Do you panelists, and Stirling, I'd like you to answer this too, if you would. Do you agree with the statement, our most powerful weapon to fight COVID-19 is patient involvement? So Danielle, I'm going to let you lead the pack, because you're very good at that.
You're picking on me, Lisa, but I'll take it.
I am.
You know, I would broaden that to say patients and public. I don't think COVID has not touched anyone, and whether they've directly had experience with COVID, or whether they have changed their healthcare seeking behaviors because of COVID, or because they're now experiencing new aspects of maybe mental and health well-being because they've lost a job, or because they're isolated, or they're managing multiple things, including teaching their children at home, or watching their children struggle in this new context. And people who are just affected more broadly. I think everybody can talk about implications of COVID in their context. So I think that we really do have to all come together in solving the problems and the challenges around COVID. I think a great example is in the public health space, how we take care of each other. BC's done a great job by that, in terms of people being aware and making choices, not just because of themselves, but because of the people around them and who they are trying to protect. So I would say that it will take all of us, and I think patients are absolutely part of that perspective, but we need to be having these conversations, and we need to make sure that everybody's aware of where we're going in research, what we're learning through our research efforts, and more broadly. So I would say yes, and to your question.
Thank you. I think actually our most powerful weapon to fight COVID-19 is Dr. Bonnie Henry. So 3 cheers to Dr. Bonnie Henry and the leadership of John Horgan, who has let her take the lead as the provincial health officer. Stefanie, what do you think about our question about the most powerful weapon?
I'm trying to think of what stance should I take on this. Definitely, I mean, of course, the patients and the public are an important aspect of fighting COVID. They are the ones that will be experiencing the disease and have the symptoms and have the data, the health data, the samples that we need to really identify, investigate more about the disease and treatments. Of course, who's going to do that identifying, investigating? There's another group of people, the researchers and the doctors, and so probably equally important, but we can't do one without the other. So they're both go hand in hand, I would say.
Thank you. Yes, I think it is a partnership. It has to be a partnership, but there are many partners involved. There aren't just 2. So thank you for that. Alison, could I ask you to comment on the question?
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I think absolutely. It's anything that when we're talking about healthcare and we're talking about patients and here the public, like Danielle stated, COVID-19 has affected everybody, all of us in some way, is bringing those voices in without the information, like from the different people, and maybe it's different stakeholders, it's the patients and it's the healthcare professionals, but it's also the decision makers, policy makers, and frontline staff all need to sort of be able to have input into the process in order to make the best decisions. There was a lot of efforts going into coordinating the research, identifying what research is being done, what should be done strategically, but also operationally. And I think that's where we need to make sure that the voices of the people this is affecting are included when those decisions are being made and the priorities set. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for that. I noticed that Terry Fleming has joined us from Research Ethics. I'm not going to put you on the spot, Terry, but one of the most wonderful things to come out of the AHSN, and I'd like Stirling to comment on this, is the rapid research ethics protocol that's been developed for COVID-19. I wonder if we can just have Megan answer the question. Sorry, Megan, to put you on the spot. And then Stirling, perhaps you could talk about research ethics. So Megan, what do you think about patient involvement being the most powerful thing?
I'm going to go with the answer yes. And my reason behind that is patients are just more than patients. Like personally, I'm a patient partner, but I'm also a healthcare student who has taken immunology courses and microbiology. So we understand more than just what we've experienced as patients. A lot of us have other backgrounds, whether that be economic or management or anything like that. So we all have something to offer, and no two patients are the same. So the more we can engage them, the further we can make decisions and research and beat this COVID-19.
I agree. We all come from different backgrounds and we have different occupational skills to offer. And never say the word exponential to an economist. That's what I've just learned. Stirling, could you talk a little bit about the Research Ethics Board and the streamlined process?
Yeah, so Research Ethics BC is one of the operating units in the Academic Health Science Network, led by Terry Fleming, who I understand is going to be a guest on SPORcast very, very shortly. And I would encourage everyone to listen to Terry. She has done a remarkable, well, she's done many remarkable things, sorry, of course, but one remarkable thing that Terry has done is to lead the province in creating a single research ethics process for COVID-related research, which means that, and a rapid process. So so that doesn't mean that like getting research started is easy in BC. It still comes with challenges, but at least the ethics piece has been streamlined through the work of Terry and her team at Research Ethics BC. So yeah, we should all raise a glass. Is that right? Or we should say thank you to Terry for the work that she has done.
Yes, and the glass is half full. Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, she's leading the work that we've done at AHSN on the COVID research inventory, which has been now a comprehensive listing of all research being done in the province on the COVID topic. So thank you, Lynn, for that reminder that I should say that. This is a very good platform to sort of give me speaking notes.
Well, we're going to rely on your memory, Stirling, because we're going to ask you to talk about the AHSN resources that have been evolved through clinical trials, through research ethics, and through the BC support unit later on. But I think we've wrapped up the question about patient partners being the most powerful weapon. So that means I'm going to toss the torch back to you to perhaps either we can talk about a question or two in the chat, or we can ask the audience a totally new question. So what would you prefer to do, Stirling?
So I've been trying to keep an eye on the chat. It's been a pretty active chat, lots of great contributions. So I'm gonna try and maybe raise a question or two from the chat. So again, I'm not Carolyn Canfield. I'm going to go to you again. No favoritism, but you've asked some great questions. So thank you for your contributions, and others have as well. So Carolyn asks the panel to reflect on going back to this issue about technology. Who is taking on the coordinating function for the innovations and the evaluation of virtual practice and the sort of technology revolution? So like how do we deal with that question about ensuring that we're learning from this, and making sure that there's coordination, but also evaluation in this space. So we've gone to Danielle every time, so we mustn't go to Danielle first.
No,
so
no.
Go to you, Alison, if we can. Thank you.
Sorry, Stirling, I was very distracted by the chat.
Oh, right. So this is a question about coordination of the innovation and the evaluation. So yeah, I mean, I guess shouldn't we be doing more trials of virtual health in BC, because it's being used so widely now, and yet we probably don't have that much. Well, we need to make sure we learn as a result of the applications that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the coordination piece is really important. I know there was something that came out in the news recently about sort of the unintended consequences of the lack of coordination and just everybody scrambling to do something and to do some sorts of research. And I think BC has shown a great example in really trying to take a coordinated approach. The Strategic Advisory Council, but also through UBC, they've been trying to coordinate whether it's operationally or making sure to avoid duplication of efforts. I think the inventory, making sure that we had a provincial inventory so people could look and see what research was being done. So the coordination piece is really important, and then the prioritization piece, and that's where I think having the patient and public voice as well, along with the other voices, is really important. And someone had mentioned about identifying patients and the publics early on in these efforts, and I know in the clinical trials coordination node, and Taylor, I believe, is on the call, we reached out early to see how we could engage patients and the public in that process.
Great, thanks. Does anyone else want to contribute to that question?
I would just add that I hope, in certain areas, vaccine development being one, there's been a lot of collaboration like we've never seen before. And I think that's the other part too. Research oftentimes has been held tight to the chest and not necessarily open access, shared knowledge, working together. And so I think that coordination piece is important, and hopefully we see that through COVID, because I do like to look at where we can find some silver linings and ways we can push things forward for the better. It'll be nice to see if through coordinated efforts and through collaboration, we can see that spread beyond COVID and beyond our current activities.
Yes, I agree. The rainbows and unicorns analogy, but not so much that, but a practical recognition that we are stronger together. And one thing that really encourages me is a lot of the COVID research is being open sourced. So I know it's expensive, but it's fantastic as well, just to be informed, because I think really information about COVID-19 is power.
I think one of the interesting things is I think the struggle for coordination. Like what we've seen is this sort of scramble, and I think what we need to now learn is actually how do we actually work together better. And I think like that's for me is like one of the things that there's no one's really got the authority to like sort of make that happen, or at least maybe the ministry has, but it hasn't really sort of effectively done that. So that would be my wish, is like how do we get people to play in the sandbox more effectively or more comfortably together.
Fantastic. And Cindy Triton has, I used to play in a sandbox, by the way. Cindy Triton has asked, would the BC Support Unit consider a virtual World Cafe to develop tools that would have been helpful to enable POR under the time pressure and the urgency that accompanied the initial pandemic? So there's a wonderful idea, almost like a continuation of this series, hopefully with Bev back in the co-host role, though Stirling, you're always welcome. But that would be a wonderful idea. So what else do we have? From Larry Moroz, we have researchers are people too. We're all scrambling to adapt to COVID, as all we are, and we need to support them better in learning to do POR in a pandemic. Now, speaking of which, the Ontario Support Unit has just come out with a new grant called Empower. I just learned about this today. It's a patient-oriented grant. It's going to be available to researchers in Ontario who are doing patient-oriented research. Another national example is that Quebec, upon learning about the pandemic, set up a public and patient partner task force. So there are lots of things that we can do and lots of things that we can learn from. Sterling, do you want to take some of the chats and read them out and perhaps ask our panelists?
Sure, yeah. So I think yeah, should we be doing something like that? I mean, like, should we have an Empower grant call in BC? I'm sort of slightly nervous about empowering. Like, it almost seems like, you know, there's quite a sort of passive sort of like someone has the power and they're now going to hand it over, and it's like almost a paternalistic sort of aspect to it. So I actually think that, you know, we should be thinking about, like, you know, moving things forward in partnership. But should we be doing that? Is that a grant opportunity that we should be working with the Michael Smith Foundation to launch in BC, specifically in this area?
Alison, did you want to jump in? What do you think about that?
I've just been reading all the comments there on the chat. I think, yeah, any chance that we get to, like, you just throwing out the questions right now and trying to get feedback, and anytime we can have an opportunity to discuss together on what the needs are and what can we do to try to help support that.
The thing is, I think a lot of patient partners are worried that COVID-19 research might take priority, and all those other really meaningful research projects and questions that we've been delving into as teams with patient partners, they're going to be left behind. So does anybody share that fear that is sort of like catching at the back of my head? Danielle, what do you think about that?
Yes, I think that is a concern. I think the other part of that, though, is when this all began, I think it was, oh, we're going to stay home for 2 weeks and then we're going to get back to it. And I don't think we know the full extent to what it's going to stop all, or shift, I guess I should say, everything towards COVID. But I also don't know that, I think we're so far in now that it will be infused, even in the research that was ongoing and started, there's going to be a blip in everybody's findings of what happened during COVID, because care changed, right? And therefore clinical trials and research changed. So it's embedded there. So I've seen a lot of people shifting, not their whole study, but then figuring out how is this going to be explained, or what are we learning now that we need to incorporate moving forward. So I think that it's unclear to me yet what the future holds with regards to how research carries forward, but I think we're past that tipping point of it not going away from all areas of research. But what I do hope we don't see is that everybody just starts changing their research to COVID because they feel that's the only way they can get funding. And I think that that's going to be an important thing for our research funders, and to really consider and figure out how they're going to move that forward. And that's going to require hearing from the public, quite frankly, because research is often publicly funded. So I would say that would be another component to consider.
So we've got a great question, which is a devil's advocate question, which I always enjoy. So I think, Megan, if you wouldn't mind thinking about this one. So the question goes, doing bad patient engagement might be worse than not doing it at all. Is it fair to ask researchers to try something new when they're dancing backwards in high heels, trying to adjust to COVID? So let me read it again, because it's a long one. Doing bad patient engagement might be worse than not doing it at all. Is it fair to ask researchers to try something new when they're dancing backwards in high heels, trying to adjust to COVID?
First off, I'd like to give a shout out to researchers, because they're doing a lot right now and they're working more hours than they ever have to try and get as much knowledge as possible. I kind of agree with the statement that doing bad patient-oriented research would be worse than not doing it all, because you might have a group of patients who are new to this and their first experience is bad and they never come back again because of it. But I also think that we're assuming it's going to be bad, where if you bring patients in, it might be great, right? Like, it might not go as smoothly as planned, but these days nothing really goes as smoothly as planned. So I still think we need to do it, even if it might not be as ideal as we had planned or as smooth as we had wanted, because we can work together and we can overcome that.
I agree. I think that there's a lot to be learned. And I got distracted by one of the questions about patient priority setting and public priority setting for COVID. And I think this is an area where, and now I'm going to pull in the power of technology and Twitter, because I think in contexts like COVID, Twitter is a great platform for people coming together and trying to quickly solve problems. It might be kind of interesting to demonstrate the power of the public by, I don't know if we could, so I'm thinking out loud here, and for those of you who are just getting to know me know that that can be dangerous. But what if we used a platform like Twitter, something where we could crowdsource ideas about what are the important topics? Twitter may not be the best format for that, but it would be interesting to see what ideas rise up. And I think we would see quickly, I think to Carolyn's idea about the James Lind Alliance, where the priorities that are set forth in respective frameworks around what research priorities need to move forward, how do they compare and contrast, and what things get the most thumbs up or likes or smiley faces or such that go with it. It could be an interesting way. Carolyn, I see your point about Twitter not representing the public. Fair point. A formal platform or some way of engaging people to even start the conversation. Just a thought.
I think patient-oriented research has a lot of converts to win over. I mean, that's the whole thing about the SPOR phase 2. That's going to be our challenge. Not only operationalizing the wonderful application that we've been working so hard on, but actually capturing the harder group of people who weren't perhaps won over right away by the whole concept of patient-oriented research. Stirling, I know you have an awful lot to say on that, but I don't want to leave this whole meeting without giving you a chance, Stirling, to explain some of the fantastic resources that have come basically out of nothing in March, and how there are perhaps you could highlight 2 or 3 of the major resources that are now being offered by the Academic Health Science Network to all people, all stakeholders in patient-oriented research.
Great, thanks. Just a shout out to Dan and Joe, our communications lead, who's put this cheat sheet together for me. So thank you very much, Dan. So, I mean, we have, as we've mentioned before, the research inventory, which is now being used widely. And we have well over 300 projects listed on that inventory. And those are all projects happening in BC with some focus on COVID. So, and I should say that all of the chat we'll actually try and synthesize and share. So all of the links and what have you, we'll make sure we share in case you don't have to get them down. So there's that. We've got the listing now of surveys that are being done in BC. So there's a lot of survey work that's happening, and the BC Ministry of Health has collated all of that, and we're sharing it through our website. The support unit has got virtual tools for patient-oriented research during COVID. So this is then like a resource that's available to folks who want to use tools that are going to be able to facilitate patient-oriented research in a virtual environment. And I think that's a really critical piece. And then there are resources through Clinical Trials BC. So we've got regulatory updates, rapid clinical trials training for COVID-19. So what Clinical Trials BC has been doing is actually like trying to ensure that we can get people trained in order to conduct clinical trials, but to do it in a more rapid way. So go to bcahsn.ca and you'll find all of that.
Thank you, Stirling. I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak about those because there's been an awful lot of hard work put in by an awful lot of people to get to this level. As we wrap up the meeting today, I'd like to end on a note of hope. And I'm fond of saying hope is not a strategy, but sometimes it's all we've got. So I'd like to ask each of our panelists to comment on the thing that gives them the most hope for going forward with patient-oriented research during COVID-19. So Alison, may I ask you to briefly comment on that question? What gives you hope?
I think at this point in time, it's a town hall like today. It's in the openness and still to us in our clinical trial space, the welcomeness to collaborate and to help us listen, and those opportunities to work together to talk about how do we engage patients in the public and clinical trials, and having those conversations, both with the patients and public, but right now with the research teams. And it gives me hope that everybody's that we've been talking to is open to those discussions and exploring what that looks like, and understanding that it's going to look different at different times with different partners. And that definitely is something that we're looking forward to doing more of.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Stefanie, what gives you hope going into what could be like a quite a critical fall period?
I think what would give me hope is that like this is now, I guess, a spotlight on health research and patient-oriented research, which may have people kind of maybe thought of in the past, like that's important, but now we really realize that it's very important. And I think what would be exciting is to be able to provide them with an action that they can do, like through Reach BC, in the sense that as we've just launched, we're now going to go into a public marketing promotion phase to let people know about research, and patient-oriented research specifically as well, that they may have not have heard of before. So I think that's really exciting, that we could be opening up this new aspect to various people in the province had no idea that even happened, or that it's an option. So I think that's my hope, is just to like spread the word and get more people involved.
Thank you. Yes, and Reach is quite an easy platform to use. I mean, if I can use it, anybody can. So Megan, what gives you hope going into this this summer and this fall coming up?
The idea that we're talking about it, and that behind the scenes there are groups of people who conduct patient-oriented research and those who want to promote it, are meeting with patient partners to see what needs to be done to make it more accessible, to make it more inclusive, to make it happen more. And the idea that we're reaching out to patient partners and just asking and talking and communicating and bouncing ideas off one another about what we think would work best.
Thank you. I love this sort of openness and transparency. I think that's vital in this time, at all times, but increasingly at this time. Danielle, can we ask you to talk about what hope means to you in COVID?
My hope is that we don't miss this opportunity. I think COVID, I think this time in our history has really laid bare the inequities in healthcare and the inequities in health research. A colleague and somebody I admire greatly, Dr. Kim Dahl, says that if you don't find yourself wildly uncomfortable and wildly inconvenienced in the conversations and the way you're looking at what is happening, then you're not doing enough. And I think that right now is our opportunity to really be vulnerable and have conversations and bring people to the table, and not bring people to the table, but to even reformulate how we've done research and how we've moved partnerships forward. And I hope we can establish those relationships in this context and move forward for a brighter future in healthcare and more broadly. So my hope is that we don't miss this opportunity, and that we do make really delicious lemonade out of lemonade out of lemon.
Yes,
so,
yes. I like that analogy. I'm actually building up a thirst right now. So Stirling, last word as honorary SPORcast co-host, and then I'll close it out. What gives you hope?
Events like this, I think like this is inspiring. Like the chat has been tremendous, so thank you everyone for contributing to the chat and engaging with us. And I think, like, you know, I'm inspired by just how many people are engaged in this conversation and wanting to move patient-oriented research forward. I think we're on, like, you know, we're moving in the right direction. Let's not be disheartened by some bumps. Let's just ride those bumps and move forward over the next little while. I think we've got great people at the table, great people supporting us, but we need to keep that equity piece firmly in our minds and make sure that we're actually now bringing in people who we don't always hear from because their voices it's not been possible for us to hear them. but let's stay the course.
Thank you, Stirling. I'm really inspired and excited by the dynamism of this interaction today. And of course, my hope comes from patient partners, but from all the stakeholders in the patient-oriented research strategy. So to the panelists, I'd like to say thank you so much for your bravery, for your time, your energy, your passion for patient-oriented research. This is a wrap-up of a series of SPORcast episodes, and the end, or perhaps it's just the beginning of a very long and winding road for two patient partners, Beverly Pomeroy and myself, who now, with the help of the BC Support Unit, will be collaborating and co-producing into the future. All of the SPORcast episodes are found on our SPORcast Twitter feed, that's _cast, #SPORcast, and many other platforms. So thank you to the BC Support Unit, the mighty team behind us, to leaders like Alison, Stefanie, Terry, your time is coming, Stirling, Megan, and again, the patient partner production team. I'd like to sign off by just saying thank you for everybody for sharing your ideas, your passion, and your energy. Thank you.
And thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
SPORcast is now zoomed to you, courtesy of hosts and creators Bev Pomeroy and Lisa Ridgway, with the able assistance of a small but mighty team of production partners at the BC Support Unit, powered by Communications Lead Justin Otteson, Project Manager Michelle Duffy, and me, SPORcast's technical producer and occasional announcer, I'm Kent Cadigan Lofsgaard.
If you'd like to get in touch with us and learn more, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at @SPOR_cast. That's SPOR, SPOR _cast, CAST, #SPORcast. We can also be reached via email at sporcast1@gmail.com or visit our website, www.sporcast.ca.